and the Crooked Mangrove. Deep in the heart of the sun-drenched wetlands lived Coral, a young scarlet ibis with feathers the color of a sunset blush. While the other birds were content with any branch, Coral had a grand ambition. She dreamed of finding the most perfect, beautiful home in the whole wide world, a place without a single flaw. She spent her days flying over the sparkling lagoon, gliding past endless chains of emerald green islands. Her eyes searched every thicket and grove for a nesting spot that was pristine and ideal. To Coral, every detail mattered. Her future home had to be just right. Coral landed on many trees, but each time she sighed and shook her head. Too short, she thought, looking at a sturdy oak. Too many leaves, she muttered about a willow. She even found a pine she liked, until she noticed its trunk. And that one is a little crooked. It simply won't do. As the sun began to dip lower, she came across an ancient mangrove tree standing alone in the saltwater shallows. It was incredibly old and gnarled. Its thick branches didn't grow straight up. They twisted and turned in every direction like a giant's tangled hair. Coral slowed down just enough to sniff at the sight. "Oh, this tree is so old and imperfect," she chirped to herself, fluttering her wings in a hurry. She turned her beak up in disdain, eager to leave the weathered old thing behind and find something newer and shinier. However, someone was already there. An ancient ibis named Ruby, whose feathers had softened to a gentle rose pink with age, was perched peacefully on one of the mangrove's widest bends. Her eyes were deep and knowing, filled with the wisdom of 1,000 tides. Ruby watched the young bird's hurried departure and called out with a voice as smooth as river stones. "Little one," she said softly, "why did you hurry past this old tree so quickly? What is it you seek that you cannot find here?" Coral circled back, hovering near the wise bird. "I want a perfect home, Ruby," she explained, her voice full of youthful energy. "I am looking for one without any flaws. A home that is neat, new, and perfectly straight. This tree is far too messy." Ruby smiled, a gentle, knowing expression that crinkled the corners of her eyes. She didn't argue or scold. Instead, she gestured with a wing toward the heart of the mangrove. "Come closer, my dear," she invited. "Look a little longer. Sometimes the eyes see only the surface." Reluctantly, Coral landed on a particularly twisted branch. It felt different beneath her feet, stronger and more solid than the thin, straight ones she'd tried before. She ran her beak over the rough bark, feeling the deep, weathered grooves and the thickness of the old leaves. Ruby hopped over to a spot where several crooked branches met. "Look how these limbs intertwine," she pointed out. "Because they grew at odd angles, they have woven together. They create perfect little shelters that the wind cannot reach and the rain cannot pierce." Suddenly, a movement below caught Coral's eye. A family of tiny, vibrant crabs was scuttling among the old, exposed roots that dipped into the water. 2 little crabs, Pip and Squeak, were playing tag in a hollow space under a heavy root. Coral leaned down further and noticed that the tree was like a vertical forest. Patches of soft emerald moss and delicate lacy ferns had tucked themselves into the rough bark. They had turned the lumps and bumps into their own beautiful tiny gardens. "Every twist and every turn you see," Ruby whispered, her voice full of reverence, "is a mark of courage. They tell the story of all the seasons and storms this old tree has bravely faced. It didn't break. It simply learned how to bend." Coral's heart began to flutter with a new kind of excitement. She looked at the mangrove again, but she didn't see messy anymore. She started to see the incredible strength in its weathered frame. The wrinkles and bumps weren't mistakes. They were badges of honor. Then, hidden behind a cluster of irregular leaves, she noticed it. A unique, natural hollow had formed where a branch had once bent away from the wind. It was nestled perfectly within the wood, a curved bowl that looked as if it were just waiting for a nest. As she stood there, the sunlight filtered through the irregular leaves above. Instead of a harsh glare, the leaves created a soft, dappled light that danced across the hollow. It felt warm, safe, and more beautiful than any perfect tree she had imagined. A warmth spread through Coral's chest. She realized that this old tree, with all its unique quirks and flaws, had a special, quiet charm. It was a place with a history and a soul, something a brand new, straight tree could never have. She decided right then and there to try. Coral began building her nest in the hollow. Instead of looking for identical twigs, she gathered pieces of different shapes and sizes. She chose a curved piece of driftwood and a weathered gray stick, seeing the beauty in each one. Day by day, her nest grew. It wasn't a perfect, symmetrical circle. It was a beautiful mix of found natural treasures, bits of dried seagrass, soft feathers she had found, and sturdy mangrove twigs. It wasn't uniform, but it was incredibly strong. Coral found a new kind of joy in the work. She spent time arranging each unique twig, appreciating its individual character. She realized that every imperfect piece she added made the nest more interesting and gave it a character that was all its own. When she was finished, the nest wasn't perfectly round or smooth, but it was sturdy, safe, and uniquely hers. A neighboring ibis named Saffron stopped by and tilted his head. "What a cozy-looking place," he remarked. "It looks like it has always belonged here." Coral looked out from her home at the rest of the gnarled mangrove. She saw it now as a masterpiece. It was beautiful precisely because of its age, its history, and all its fascinating crooked twists. It was a tree that had lived a full and vibrant life. She looked over at Ruby, who was still perched nearby, watching the moon rise. Coral finally understood. True beauty and peace weren't found in a frantic search for perfection. They were found in embracing the wonderful, unique imperfections that make the world real. In her perfectly imperfect home, Coral finally found the deepest peace. She fell asleep to the sound of the water lapping against the roots, knowing that beauty was all around her, not in the things that were flawless, but in the things that had a story to tell.